to Impromptu Enlightenment. We have a lot of fun here, you guys. We're just kind of goofy. My name is Tina Adkins, and I'm with Serafina Krupp and Susan Queen. And if you haven't watched our introductory video, go back and watch that really quickly. It'll give you a little more introduction into what it is we're doing. But today we're going to talk about, in terms of our conversation, we're going to start with emotional intelligence. And we're just going to see where that goes based on spirit and our basic information. So who would like to start?
Well, I think Tina has a lot of information.
Yeah,
On
because
you have the book. You brought
Well, in terms of emotional intelligence, from just an overall standpoint, we're talking about how it is that you interact as yourself when you are involved in emotional situations. So, for example, if someone says something to you and it upsets you, you want to look at why it upsets you. You want to be self-aware as to why it upsets you. You want to know how much in control you are of your emotions and how it is that you deal with them. Now, my perspective comes from a coaching and a spiritual counseling side, where I want to teach you how to be more aware of yourself and what you're mad about and what triggers it pushes on you when people say certain things that create these emotions, and then how to be more well-behaved when you interact with people emotionally. And it's also, a lot of companies are looking at that in terms of hiring people. They give you emotional intelligence tests because it's not necessarily important to them so much now about education as it is about how you interact with people. And because we are an interactive world, it's important to be acting like an adult and not a 9-year-old and have a temper tantrum when you're dealing with someone. So that's my perspective on it, is how you interact with people based on whether or not your emotions rule you, or whether your mind and your thoughts rule your emotions in terms of your interaction with people, which is really important, because what you say to people, you're responsible for as to how that lands on them and then the outcome of that. And we always want it to be a win-win. We always want it to be an exchange of energy, positive energy, wouldn't you agree? Mm-hmm. And we want it to be a communication that leaves both parties feeling comfortable and like they've met their goals.
And and I always feel like we live and we experience our life through our emotions. I mean, that's how our perception of life is through our emotions and our feelings. And I was telling the girls earlier that a great speaker, you don't necessarily remember what the person has said, but you remember how you felt and how you feel and how they made you feel, and if they told you a story which you could get into. And my experience with emotional behavior is, I wanted to know about myself. Why would I get triggered? Why do I get hooked? I literally went on a retreat, Vipassana, where you don't talk for 10 days and you just breathe and you get into your body and you release all this stuck energy that is on you. And it was like through breathing and just taking a look at it and breathing it through, whether they were saying whether it's pain or whether it's pleasure, it'll still give you the same sensation, and you just breathe through it and you let it pass. You observe it objectively. That was like the whole retreat, because we're so subjective. And what's really sad is we are living on old stories, old scripts inside of us, and we're just so unaware of our self-talk, our stories, that because between the ages of 0 and 7, we have programmed ourselves. Our brains are wired, and our stories are inside of us. So all of us are running our lives like a 6-year-old. Right. But once we can become aware of our programs, our stories, getting into our higher self, putting the ego in the corner, really becoming aware of our self-talk and looking at those stories and saying, I'm making this story like it's happening to me now. This happened to me 13 years ago. Why am I crying? It's just a story. Once you can get through the process of looking at your self-talking, your stories, as it's just a story, it's not happening to you right now, you can release these emotions. Right. And forgive. I mean, I think a lot of us need to do the forgiveness, that Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono.
I always say it wrong.
Ho'oponopono.
I love you, forgive me, I'm sorry, thank you.
We can do a whole nother show on Ho'oponopono.
It's beautiful.
But if I may, just to interject really quickly, in terms of self-talk, your self-talk is what your subconscious believes. So the subconscious doesn't differentiate between the truth and a lie.
Right.
It just knows what it knows to be true. So whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're going to be right, because that's what you will manifest through that thought.
And the subconscious always reaches its goal.
That's correct.
So we need to rewire our brains.
Correct. So if you were told as a little person that you were not smart, it's very likely that you will believe that you
you're
are not
stupid.
smart, regardless of whether you are or not. And until you change that thought process and you change the neuroreceptors that believe that, which is really simple, you just rewrite that script, and we can do a show on that too, talk about self-talk. Once you rewrite that script, everything changes. And so as a metaphysician, and from a spiritual standpoint, if you know these things, and of course this just being one of our first shows, we'll have a lot of other shows that talk about these things. Once you learn this, you can reprogram your self-talk and retrain yourself so that you have a different outcome in your destiny.
And start today.
Yeah, start today, absolutely. What do you got to say, Susan? Susan is a wealth of information, and I didn't want to interject on you, but I wanted to address the self-talk before we got too much
also
further.
like the heart.
It's good coffee.
The heart. No, and they had a thing where the heart was filled with so many.
Well, I look at it like from a different perspective too.
Sure.
Like I get, the logic in it, but I look at it as, for me, like triggers or behaviors are what I call activators.
Okay.
And I believe in science and spirituality. I like the blend, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so I like when we're working with negative self-beliefs, I like to even go further than this life. I like to go into a past life. I like to go on, where is the root of this issue? And I guarantee it's not in this life. It may have been.
True.
It may have been triggered in this life, but I will guarantee it's a past life that needs to be removed, because that past life is stuck in your aura, or science calls it your morphogenic energy field. It is stuck, and spiritual tools can remove that and let you move forward in your behavior. So
Would you say it's on a DNA level?
absolutely. And even though it manifests in this life as behavior, it's normally, what I find with clients is that it goes way beyond this life. It goes way beyond. But what's fascinating is once you find that root and you let go of it and you bring it to the light, you bring it like enlightenment, you bring it forward into the light,
Right.
it dissolves. Spirit will dissolve it, and it's just,
You have to.
that's when miracles happen to
And you want to release it.
it will be, and you have to be open to receiving that miracle. You have to, in your heart, know that you're open to receiving. And I always like people to, continue with affirmations. It's like, I'm open to changing. I'm willing to change. Even before they have a session, really, because then that amplifies the session.
Right.
So, but when you look at, a lot of the great thinkers of our lifetime, like when you look at Einstein, when you look at Steve Jobs, when you look at Tesla, when you look at all these, incredible minds, when you type in intuition into the computer, you're going to get all of these people, because they all tell you intuition is much more valuable than logic. Like they would rather have their intuition, and that's because they are aware that there is much more than this going on, than this 3D world. They were aware that we are multidimensional beings, and we have that power, because it's a free will planet, to access that. Just for us learning balance, like
Right.
in this world.
Right. So you can see that the diversity of how we think is going to be very exciting when we talk about stuff, because I do agree with Susan that we can carry things over from those dimensions, because we know that there are many out there. Quantum physicists have defined, I think, 10 different dimensions. By the way, time is not one of them. So,
Yes.
time is just something that we've made up here. And we talk about different dimensions. And even when we talk about people who've transitioned into what we think is death, but it's actually just an energetic form, there's no time there either. So
Right.
what we think is time really doesn't have any sort of bearing on any of the other dimensions that we might work within. It's just something that we've created here. But from a metaphysical standpoint, just looking at people who are dealing with this time frame in which we're living and don't have experience with past lives, which we can go back and talk about on another show, all of those kinds of things, because you can see there's all kinds of information that these two ladies have. That's going to be very exciting to talk about, and we'll bring in other folks as well. But just in terms of be aware how you speak to people. Be aware of what weight your words have, because words not only have, just in talking about the word itself,
Right.
let's say we're talking about love, love has a vibratic energy to it, and based on how you utilize that vibration in terms of your intention behind it,
Right.
you can distort the word.
Yes,
You
and
can.
then
Sure.
and then also my father used to always say, if you don't have anything kind to say, don't say it at all.
That's
I mean,
true.
Why?
Yeah, you
I
don't
mean,
have-
really.
You don't have to say
Oh.
everything that pops into your brain doesn't have to come out of your
Please.
mouth.
Right.
It's hurtful.
You
You can't take
know,
it back.
Yeah.
And nobody's perfect. I mean, every
Exactly.
once in a while, you lose it. And it's,
Exactly.
and you just got to forgive yourself.
Oh yeah, and that's another.
because God knows
Yeah.
I'm.
Right.
And that's another thing we were
I've
talking
lost
about
it before.
Exactly, and that we were talking about that earlier before. Don't say anything if you have an emotional heart. If you don't have a clear
Right.
heart, if you have emotions on it, if you're upset with somebody, go in the other room, say an Our Father or Hail Mary or
Or
just
hit a pillow.
or hit a pillow. Your vibration will
Count
change.
to 10.
Because you always want to say something to somebody with
Right.
a clear heart, if
Exactly.
it's possible. Don't say anything at all. I mean, really?
Go
Yeah.
to the back
I mean,
cages.
Right, because what you're doing, we were talking about earlier, when you blame, shame, and criticize another person, what you are doing is you're regressing them to a 2-year-old, so they'll blame, shame, and criticize you. Then you're regressed to a 2-year-old, and 2 2-year-olds are talking to each other.
And you're off.
I mean, and you're off.
And you're off and running.
Yeah.
For
And-
why?
and
Who
nothing-
hasn't done that before?
Exactly. And
Right.
nothing really gets, and then you walk away from that going, okay,
Really?
Oh, I feel like crap. And you know what else too is I think you get into the 3D drama energy. Then
Oh,
it's
what's
like,
that?
oh, and you know what so and so said, and you know so that
Oh,
and
right,
then
right, right.
and then it's like I call that 3D drama.
Right, and
Because it like hooks you. It's
and
like,
if you do that, a wise woman once told me that if you let that get to, then the vibration goes down.
was that me?
And that was you. If you allow yourself to get into that vibration, you're not connected to the divine. I mean,
To your
you're in a
higher
low, your higher self. You're in a lower vibration, and
Right.
heaven can't give you all the messages that you need to get because you're being disconnected.
Right.
You know,
That's
we
right.
don't want to do that.
So I think it's good, like honestly, I think it's good during the day to do a little energy check on yourself. Like,
Right.
and just make sure, you're grounded, you're connected, and, just be a little aware, like you were talking about being self-aware and
Right.
being conscious of where you're at.
Right.
Like, I know I tend to be more emotional if I'm real scattered or if I'm too busy, if I
Right.
if I'm taxed, tend to be a little bit more,
Yeah.
And that's kind of how our lives have developed, is so
Right.
that we're so busy living lives
Yeah.
that we forget that we need to be
Just stop,
In the
check
present.
in. Yeah.
And talking about
Yeah.
time,
Bring
no,
it back
past,
in.
present, and future, the present
Right.
is all
We
that
have.
any of us have. And actually, I feel, and then people,
Mm-hmm.
that come to me and want readings and stuff, they say, well, when should I pray? When should I go, you could live your whole day in a meditative prayer
Mm-hmm.
in what you're doing and what you're saying. Your whole day could be filled with bliss.
Right.
You
So
know,
if you take purpose in everything that
Yeah.
you do.
Well, if you
Yes.
stay home and don't go out of the house.
no,
if you just,
not true.
if you just,
Or if you live in a monastery, then you can have bliss all day.
if you, well, if you
No,
can
well,
practice,
that's, if you practice,
if you can practice
Okay,
being
you're
in
like-
the
Do you guys have
present.
kids?
I do not. I do not have children, so
Okay,
I
okay.
understand.
But okay,
All
but
right.
they do bring that energy, and children are just like that.
Yeah, oh,
They just
okay.
came from heaven. They
That's
just
a
came
whole
from-
nother show.
I know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a whole.
They
nother-
just came from that
They're
vibration.
heaven. They're heaven.
Yeah, they make sense of things.
Yeah, okay.
They do.
Well,
They bring
I'll
us
send
down.
mine over for a few days.
Okay.
We will amp them up on sugar and send them back.
Yeah, seriously.
Buy them a
That'd be
drum
funny.
set, amp them up on sugar, and send them back. That's my
So
philosophy
that
for
you
kids.
know, this is our show today. I hope
Let me
you've
just talk
enjoyed
about
it.
this really
Oh,
quickly.
sorry.
I just wanted to bring to your attention this book, and please don't come after me for copyright, but this book here has actually got some really great tests to test yourself. One of them is on emotional intelligence. There's tests on, and you can apply, even though it says career, you can apply this to your personal life. So this book, you can get it on Amazon right there. Has a test in there for you to take on emotional
Oh,
intelligence.
fun.
It also gives you more in-depth conversation. Even Socrates talked about emotional intelligence before it was actually labeled emotional intelligence. So it's something that wise people have known about for a long, long time. And so,
Should we leave with Plato?
should we leave with Plato?
I think so. Therefore, I am.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. So,